right, so good morning, good evening, everybody. We've got an audience and speakers joining us from around the world, I think like 8, 9 time zones today. So welcome into another exciting Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants broadcast. My name is Jesse. If you're new to what we do, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world through like 40 to 50 live, free, interactive monthly broadcasts. It's always a ton of fun. I thank you guys so much for joining us as we continue to showcase and celebrate such amazing explorers and scientists around the globe. And as I was saying to Ginika before we got underway today, this has been like our most international start to the year ever. In the last 3 weeks, we've been to 6 continents, including Antarctica, several times already. It's been a wild, incredible journey. And so thank you all so much for joining us as we get right into the midst of February, which is always our biggest month. And it's our month entirely dedicated to amazing women in science and exploration. It's usually the biggest audience we get, the most programs we get. And so thank you all so much for being a part of it. Now, today, I'm particularly excited. I get to hang out with the coolest people all the time, and it's a really great gig, but there's a topic that I've long wanted to have the chance to feature on this broadcast, and I've never had a speaker come in to talk about it, and that is the Rising Star Cave System in South Africa. This is one of the most incredible sites for understanding the origins of humanity and another hominid species ever discovered in history. This is all in the last not too long a time, too, so it's something that highlights the ever-changing, ever-growing ability of people to discover new stories about our origins, about the world around us, about people and mankind and the world and the universe beyond. Can you tell I'm excited? I'm so thrilled today to have Ginika Ramsawak. She is joining us in South Africa, and today she's going to talk about the search for the origins of man, about Homo naledi, about her work at the Rising Star Cave System, and so much more. Breathless excitement aside, professional detachment out the window, I'm going to bring her in to blow your minds. And so thank you so much, Ginika, for joining us today. Welcome to Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants.
Hi, Jesse, and good morning to everybody on the other side. I'm super excited to be here. And before I get started, I just want to let you guys know I'm going to introduce you a little bit to archaeology, just to segue into Rising Star so you guys get an idea of what we do.
Fantastic.
Awesome. So can I start?
You can start. You can dive in with your presentation or videos, whatever's first.
Cool, guys. So if you just give me a second.
While you're pulling that up too, I'll note if anyone's on YouTube, you guys can join in, share where you're joining from around the globe. We'd love to hear where our audience is from today. But Ginika, you are good to go. We got the presentation up, full screen. Go for it.
Okay, awesome. So I'm here to speak to you a little bit about archaeology, which is basically discovering the past. And I am an archaeologist, which means that I'm a scientist that tries to understand ancient civilizations, how they use the land around them. And that can include anything from how they farmed and how, they had their culture and how they interacted with animals, how they interacted with other civilizations. So it's a number of things. And these ancient civilizations are from all over the world. So you might recognize some of them. There's ancient Egyptians, there's the Zulu warriors from South Africa, which is where I'm from. There's ancient Romans, there's Neanderthals, there's Native Americans. And so all of these civilizations sort of form a part of a puzzle in a timeline from various different eras. And so not everything on this timeline is 100% correct to an archaeologist's eye, but this is just to show you guys that archaeologists can look at things from 3 million years ago to all the way, maybe say 60 years ago. So it's quite a long time range that we can look at stuff. And here's another timeline for you guys to show you just some of the ancient civilizations that are pretty popular, famous for many, many things. So what exactly do archaeologists do, and how do we kind of figure stuff out, and how do we understand these civilizations? So there's a lot of misconceptions about what we do. There's tons of movies like Indiana Jones, video games like the Lara Croft series, Tomb Raider, and these are all action-packed, full of exploration and adventure. Now, while the exploration and adventure might be true, like up there, which is me in the cave system at Sterkfontein in South Africa, it isn't always that extreme exploration. What we do have is we also can look at sediments for quite a long time, and then we also excavate for quite a long time. This can mean we often look at bones, ancient pottery, and many other things like stone tools, iron tools, and sometimes it can also involve the extraction of ancient plants from deep down. And so there's various different components to archaeology. It can also mean that we can have lots of lab work, and that means working with different chemicals, a lot of microscope work, which means I can look at thousands, if not millions, of tiny little microscopic things that can tell me so much about one civilization. And so, a bit about what I personally do is I kind of look at stuff like this, which is a pollen grain from a reed, and this is fungi. And these are tiny things that tell me how an ancient civilization might have farmed the landscape, what kind of methods they used to farm the landscape, and various other things, like if there was a drought in the area, if there was a flood. And I kind of learn more about how they sort of fit into those timelines. And so that means that I get to do a lot of cool things and that I look at a lot of cool different landscapes. So this is one of my favorites. This is Komati Gorge in Mpumalanga, South Africa. This is a wonderful hilltop, and these are Iron Age civilizations. There's lots of evidence for agriculture, farming. Here is Classy's River in the Eastern Cape, so beautiful ocean view, lovely landscape to explore. And my favorite is Rising Star Cave in the Northwest province of South Africa. So I am basically here today to tell you a story about my recent adventure at Rising Star Cave. And that adventure starts with a very mysterious cryptic text from my mentor, Dr. Kiniwe Molopiane. And the text read, "How brave are you?" And I saw this text and thought to myself, I'm pretty brave, right? I kind of, I'm the friend that removes spiders. I look at horror movies without flinching. I mean, I'm brave. I can handle anything. So the moment I saw this text, I kind of thought it was a challenge. And I was like, yes, I'm pretty brave. Why are you asking? And so she mentioned that she was putting together a team for an expedition called the Dragon's Back Expedition at Rising Star. And so Rising Star Cave is located in South Africa, which is this country over here. And the star is where Rising Star Cave is. And so this is an exciting cave system because it's pretty unpredictable and there's lots of different fossils in there. And it is located on the border of two different provinces in South Africa. It's the Northwest and Gauteng province, which is the US equivalent of the border of two states. So here is a map of the Rising Star cave system. And well, it's called the Dragon's Back Expedition because we'd be working in the Dragon's Back chamber, which is in red. It's in the red circle. And this is about 90 meters underground, which is, I think, 295 feet or maybe 98 yards. So this is a long way underground. And if you look at this map, it doesn't look like it's quite, a crazy journey or quite a challenging journey. And that was until Dr. Kiniwa pointed out some of the risks of this journey to me. So the thing about Rising Star Cave is that it can be pretty unpredictable and anything can happen. And the reason for that is that there was a lot of mining activity in the area. And that means that the underground cave systems can sometimes be unstable, and you have instances where the roof can sometimes collapse. So you've got to be sharp and you've got to kind of be on your feet and make sure that you're always, being safe, wearing the correct gear, and always ready for anything. There's also a lot of narrow passageways, which means that if you are afraid of tiny spaces, this isn't the expedition for you. there's a lot of slippery cave climbs, which means you could fall and injure yourself. So you've got to get good grip and some good caving shoes to make sure that you're quite stable. And then there's about 6 to 8 hours that I would have spent underground every day for about 3 to 4 weeks. It's also pretty dark, which means that our headlamps can sometimes not be enough to guide our way and help us navigate this cave system. There's also minimal airflow, which means that there's low levels of oxygen and you can't have too many people down there at once. So I'm going to show you 3 videos. The first is going to be of a climb. The second is going to be a crawl. And the third is going to be one to show you scale of each of those things. And this is just to give you an idea of some of the things that we had to go through down there. And so you can understand the space. So let me
I got him queued up. Yeah, we're good to go, Ginika. Perfect.
Yes.
Go.
Oh.
Oh my god, insanity.
So just is there a way to get through in front of you there?
I'm going to have to do it.
Apparently, our guide doesn't 100% know the way.
I know the way. I don't know the easiest way.
That's fine. We're just looking around for the way out.
Don't worry about that. Okay, so the second video is a climb, or rather a crawl through what's called the post box.
It's like at a certain point you do dead legs and just pull yourself. You can't move your legs. Undo. There we go. We just squeezed through there. I don't know if you can see how tiny it is. So tiny. It's so tiny. You can't move your legs or your butt up too high.
And your head. You can't lift your head up.
It's a look down and army crawl. Star, and we're about to go through the post box. No, that's not the squeeze. It's right there. Super teeny tiny. Put your like shoe or something over there for scale. Yeah, that's what we're squeezing through. It'll be super fun.
Okay, so that hopefully gives you some idea of the tight spaces and some of the dangers that we had to encounter while we were down there. But I also want to help you understand why we were down there and why someone might feel like going down there and enduring all of this extreme things. And the reason for that is Homo naledi. Now, Homo naledi is an extinct hominin, which means that this is an ancestor that is a relative of human beings. And this ancestor lived about 250,000 years ago, and they had big brains, which means that they were able to solve some complex problems in their landscape, and also that they were able to navigate the complex African landscape. And so once I'd gone through the application process and I was accepted onto the team, the adventure began. So we set up our tents and I was ready for 3 to 4 weeks out there into the field. And so each day would kind of start like this with a team briefing by Professor Lee Berger and Dr. Kinyiwe. And they would kind of tell us in this briefing the kind of dangers we'd encounter. We'd also do checks for our equipment, make sure we had harnesses in case anything happened, or check our headlamps, make sure that everything was working, had backup batteries and all of that, so that we could go down there and we were fully prepared for anything. So after we'd done that, we then went through 2 climbs, and then you enter what we call the Superman crawl, which looks like this. And it doesn't look like much, but it is quite a challenging crawl to get through. And the reason it is called the Superman crawl, so I'm just going to show you the map. so we can understand where exactly that is in the cave. That is over there. And the Superman crawl is basically the entrance to the Dragon's Back chamber. And the reason it's called Superman's crawl is because you kind of have to put your arms out in front of you, just like how Superman flies, and scurry your way through the crawl. It's not a very long crawl, but it's quite difficult to get through. And once you get through it and into the chamber, it kind of looks like this. The area immediately above the crawl is unstable, so you kind of have to get out of that. Then we call into the intercom, which is over there, and we call into the command center, which is at the surface of the cave. And that is a bunch of people that are sitting there looking at computer screens and trying to locate us, understand where we are, and we're in constant communication with them to make sure that nothing goes wrong. We call in and say something kind of like, "Hello, command center. This is the Dragon's Back team, come in." So command center will then come in and give us the green light to excavate for the day. They'll say that everything's okay with them upstairs, that they can hear us fine, and they can get a visual on everything that's going on downstairs. And so we then sign off and head over to the excavation area, which looked like this. So here are some strings that will be set up in a grid. And this grid consists of various different squares that each person was allocated. And in each of those squares, there's a camera. So if you look all over this picture, there's a camera positioned. And that is basically for command center to see what's going on in each and every single square. And so every person was allocated a square, and here is mine. So that is what my square looks like. And I kind of had a tricky square because there was a feature, and this feature over here is a bit of the roof that had collapsed onto my square. So it's not a perfect square, and I had to make up little squares from the bigger square to kind of understand what was going on in there and to understand if bits of the roof had collapsed in and how I could track that. So how does one excavate? So you basically have lots of little brushes, palette knives, trowels, and sometimes even chopsticks. And the reason for those various different tools is because this is very delicate material. It's from over 250,000 years ago. So you have to remember that it's quite fragile, and you can't just get in there with a shovel and start digging. You'll damage the stuff, and well, we wouldn't want that. We have to understand how Homo naledi lived, and in order to do that, we have to be very, very precise and very careful. We also weren't allowed shoes in the excavation space, so we had to have special socks, and we then took off our shoes when we got down under, and then hopped into the excavation area with our special socks. And I was kind of in this crouched position for over 6 to 8 hours in a day, and I couldn't move up. So there's a string above me, just above my back. You can have a look at that and see that if I move, I kind of mess up the whole grid and nobody knows what's going on. So I had to be very careful not to do that either. And then what happens when I find something? So here is a laser that is set up, and then this laser helps me track the depth and the position of whatever I find. In most cases, it was just bone. And in one of the other squares, we'd found a bit of cranium, so it's a bit of the skull from a Homo naledi individual. And so once we'd found that, we then track this using the laser, measure the depth and the position in the absolute grid. And then I have to take tons of pictures. So I've got to do a lot of jumping and hopping around the square to take those pictures so that the person having a look at whatever I've excavated can understand everything that's going on in my grid. And that helps everyone kind of place what's going on at the site. So here is a picture of everyone working together. And you can see how tight the space was in the Dragon's Back chamber. And there's a lovely little laptop there. So that laptop was a backup communication system in case our intercom or the camera system didn't work. So we've got a stream that's live to the command center via laptop, and that was kind of positioned right next to me. So we'd kind of make jokes about what was going on down there. And this is what the space looks like without that many people in it. So this is from a ledge that's quite higher up, and you can get a good view of everything that's going down there. So what exactly did we find down there? On this particular Dragon's Back expedition, we found evidence of fire, which doesn't seem like much, but you have to remember that not a lot of creatures use fire. We are some of the only creatures, in fact, the only creature that uses fire today. The only other creatures would have been maybe Neanderthals and perhaps now Homo naledi. So we found bits of charcoal that we suspect dates back to 250,000 years ago. And we believe that these Homo naledi individuals were navigating the cave system and burying their dead using fire. So they were creating torches in some way or making hearts and then using this to navigate a very, very dark cave. And so we think that that is pretty cool. And that is a big find in the world of archaeology and paleoanthropology. And that we left the expedition pretty happy that we'd contributed to something pretty big in our field. And we were excited to find out more. So we're pretty excited to go back underground and figure out more things. And we ended off the expedition with a fire of our own, with some s'mores and a braai. And I think the American equivalent of that is a barbecue. And watched a lovely sunset. And so that was my journey underground. And I hope you enjoyed hearing about it. And thank you for listening to me.
Thank you for joining us. What an incredible story. And again, one of my very favorite things in science in the last 10 years, easily. And so neat to get the sort of first inside look at what that all is about. And the videos are incredible. Anyway, I'm going to not ask a ton of questions, even though I'd like to, and I'll turn it over to our kids. We've got our GL Armstrong crew. I'll come to you guys in a second. DeWitt Middle School joined us. Miss Higgins' class on YouTube is fantastic. We're going to come to all our live classes in just a second. We've got one from YouTube to give our live groups a chance to percolate. So Esther in Miss Higgins' class wants to know, is it cold down in the Dragon's Back? What's the temperature like down there?
Okay, so hi Esther, how are you? Thanks for the question. It is a bit cold down in Dragon's Back, and the reason for that is that there is some sort of airflow and the temperature, there's no sun that comes down there. So it is a bit colder. And interesting fact is that it's warmer in summer. We don't know the reason for that, but when we were down there, it was winter. So we found it to be much colder down there than it was up on the surface. So yeah, it is pretty cold.
Thanks, Esther. Let's head to Miss Ball's class. Grade 12 is joining us in Goderich, Ontario. If you guys want to come on in for a question, you are good to go. Hey, guys.
Like just if they had any like classes, they talked about certain ones.
Yeah.
So,
Hey, Miss Ball's class.
Hey, how's it going? We're just
Good.
question organized. What is it?
just if they had any big collapses and what the
Oh,
for that would be and how far it's looking back.
have you had any big collapses? What's the protocol for that, and how far does it set you back?
Perfect.
So we haven't had any big collapses yet, but there is a bit of roof that is quite unstable that's very close to the excavation area. And the protocol for that would be to get out of there immediately and also be in contact with the safety team. So you've got to have your harnesses and everything on you at that time, because once there's a collapse, the cave system then changes and it's not similar to what we know. So we'd have to then check in with command center, which is why we have many communication systems set up. And you even take your phone down there. We've got Wi-Fi, so we frequently phone command center and make sure that everything's in order. So I hope that answers your question.
No, that's perfect. And whether it's Antarctic explorers, space explorers, cave explorers, the amount of prep that goes into these things, and the amount of contingency plans, and the amount of making sure that if there is a problem, you can get out safely, that there isn't a problem to begin with, that everyone's in constant contact is so integral. And I always like to highlight that as part of the exploration process. You're not winging it. You're going in with a very set plan. GL Armstrong, I'm going to come to you guys live. So you've got your two devices. Welcome in 5A in Hamilton. If you want to unmute your other one, I know you've got the audio on the one, the video on the other, but you're good to go to ask a question. Hey, guys. Hi.
So, hi. So we do have some questions for you. Ava, do you want to ask your question?
How long did it take to climb down into the caves?
Yes. How long does it take every day?
Okay, so it takes about 15 to 20 minutes to reach the depth that we were at. So that's about 98 yards, which I think is 295 feet underground. So it takes about 15 to 20 minutes. There's a deeper part of the cave, which takes much longer. That's about an hour, hour and a half. And if you get stuck, maybe 2 hours. So it can take quite a while.
Great question, guys. All right. Grade 6 virtual school, Miss Jansen's class. If you want to turn on your camera, Mike, I'll come to you guys in just a second, but we'll head to DeWitt Middle School first while you're doing that. Welcome in, guys, Miss Maxwell's class. Hi. Hi, everybody. Any of you have a question?
Did you find any bones while you were there?
Any bones?
I found tons of bones.
Yeah.
So I found mostly what we call microfauna, which is tiny rats, little birds, and that sort of thing. So I found so many little bones. And then we also found a bit of a skull from one of the Homo naledi individuals. So yes, we find lots of bones down there.
Great question, guys. All right, our virtual school crew in Unionville, if you want to unmute your mic, you are good to go. Hey.
Hi. So my class wants to know how you became an archaeologist. Did you go to college, and what kind of training did you get to go into the cave?
Okay, so I became an archaeologist because I was interested in it when I was about 9 or 10 years old, and I read a lot about it. And I did have to go to university for it, and I'm currently finishing up my master's degree. So I did an undergraduate degree in archaeology, or with a double major in anthropology. And that gave me the stepping stone to become an archaeologist. And the kind of training that I had to undergo was minimal because I was already versed in caving. I had been to the Sterkfontein Caves, which is just opposite the Rising Star Cave. And during one of my years of study, I had someone that had trained me in it. So you kind of have to find someone that's pretty experienced in caving and get them to help you out and learn the caving lingo and all of the things about caving. So yeah.
Yeah. I like that you mentioned the mentor too, and so many of the people we have on, they have people that train them and help them, and that's such an essential part of science and exploration. Like, find people that are passionate about what you are, and then ask them for help. It really does go a long way, and people are almost always willing to share their knowledge, their expertise, their passion with you. Classes on StreamYard. I will come back to you live. You don't need to type questions in the chat. I'm coming back soon, I promise. Ginika, I wanted to know, why do we think the fossils are in the cave? Did Homo naledi go that deep into the cave? Like, it seems unlikely that ancient hominid would crawl through those, tiny areas to get somewhere. What's our hypothesis for all that?
Okay, so what we have to remember is that this ancient hominid wasn't like us. So their hands, if we look at our hands, very different, much tinier. Their hands are more adapted for this sort of thing. So they've got hands that are a bit longer than ours. So if you look at my hand, it's pretty tiny, pretty small. Their hands are quite longer, so they've got grip on those rocks. And they're able to scurry through these things much faster because they're just built for it. So the running hypothesis for many years is that they were going down there to a much deeper part of the cave, which is called the naledi chamber. And that is about 393 feet or 131 yards underground. It's just below the Dragon's Back chamber, which is where we were at. And the naledi chamber is where we believe they were burying their dead. We don't know why they were doing this, which is why we have to go on more expeditions to kind of figure that out. But we know that they definitely were doing that, because why else would they go underground, and why would there be such a large volume of fossils down there?
Yeah, what a cool story. Anyway, I can't wait to keep following up and see more all about this in the years to come. Ginika, I'm going to head back to YouTube for a minute, then we'll do another round with our live classes. You're a really fast question answerer, so we have time for a whole other round, which is great. So in Miss Higgins' class, Malia wants to know, how do you know how long an artifact was from? Like if you find something, how do you know if it's 10,000 years or 5,000 years or 3 million years or what have you?
Okay, thank you for your question, Malia, and that's a very good question. So we know that an artifact is a certain age because we do a number of dating methods. So at any archaeological site, you have to do at least 3 different methods, and there's various different methods. Generally, if it's bone, we would do radiocarbon dating, and then you've also do something called paleomagnetic dating, which is based on the Earth's magnetic pull and how it changes every single year. And then there's something called uranium series dating, which is a very, very common one in cave systems. And that is the dating of the rock and the uranium in the rock, which is present in limestone, which is found in caves. And that is then used to figure out the age because the decay of the uranium isotope is very, very precise. And that is how we figure out the age of various artifacts.
I've never heard someone mention that they always do 3 different methods. Like that is, I mean, and you'd have different labs do those same methods and the same material all around the world. You get the same result because it's so precise. It's just fascinating. Very cool. Yeah. Miss Ball's class, I'm going to come back to you, grade 12s. If you've got a question for us, come on in and take us away. Hey, guys.
Did they live in the cave or were they just buried?
Do you think the Homo naledi lived in areas of the cave, or were they just crawling down?
So for now, there isn't evidence to suggest that they might have lived down there. Once we find more evidence, which will look like maybe, ancient beds, which has been found in South Africa, but of different civilizations, or maybe more stone tools. If we find stone tools, then we know that they were coming down there frequently and living there, and it was an area that they frequented. So for now, we just have a hypothesis that suggests that they were just burying their dead. So fingers crossed that we find more evidence that suggests cooler things.
So for ancient beds, just because there are multiple meanings of the term bed, like you literally mean like a place where people sleep?
Okay, so so at a site in South Africa, it's called Border Cave. There's sort of, yes, beds where people sleep, and that would look like, it wouldn't look like a bed like we know.
No.
It would look like basically like a lot of reeds put together in a certain shape. And then what I do is look at ancient plant material. And then once I analyze and find this stuff in the sediments, and then we also have a look at the structure, the way that it was set in. Then once we date that, it was then found that there are ancient beds in the cave system, Border Cave, within South Africa. So yeah.
What? I mean, I've never heard of this in my entire life. So you find the reeds, how intact are they? How are they just like?
So not exactly the reeds. So sometimes you find maybe seeds that has been intact, and that can survive millions of years in an archaeological record, depending on many factors, of course. That depends on, the erosion rate at a site, volcanic activity, rain, floods, droughts, all of those types of things. And that kind of tells you about the preservation at a site. And so you find evidence can be something tiny, from microscopic pollen grains to, a little bit of seeds that we find. So that kind of tells you, evidence is a wide range of things. And that helps us determine exactly what was going on at a site.
Super, super cool. DeWitt Middle School, they had to go, but I'm going to ask this question on their behalf so they can watch the recording later. They shared it in the chat. What would happen if it rained, and how did you hold your stuff? You've got all these things, you're going through the caves. How are you keeping this with you? And if it rains, do you have to get out of there in a hurry, or what's the deal?
Okay, so we haven't had a situation where it rained because South Africa isn't a winter rainfall region. And so it was winter when we were down there caving, but the cave is underground. So well, there aren't many entrances that are located directly above us, so the rain wouldn't have affected us. There has been one instance that I know of where I was underground and there has been rain and it didn't really affect us. But as a precaution, if there is rain, and the reason for this is because that area is known for what we call flash floods, so extreme rain, but just for like a few minutes. As a safety precaution, we just get out of the cave. And how we would carry stuff down there is we've got these caving bags, which are quite strong, sturdy, durable. And then we've also got little plastic boxes, and we kind of put stuff in there and then put on our cave backpacks and head on down. And that is how we carried stuff down there.
I keep tearing my backpack every year or so. Maybe I should get one of the caving books. It'll be much more.
Maybe you should.
I'm going to head back to GL Armstrong, grade 6 virtual school, and then one more from YouTube before we wrap up together. So our Hamilton crew, 5A, if you guys want to come on in, you're good to go. Hey.
Here, guys. Good question. So, Sky? Oh, you're just waving.
We're just waving.
Okay, hi.
Hello. Do we have another question? Right?
Yeah, you had one in the chat for us a minute ago.
Oh, yeah, we have one in the chat. Sorry.
That's okay. So one of yours was, did you find a complete skeleton, or has anyone found a complete skeleton yet? Okay.
Okay, so deeper down in the cave, in the naledi chamber, there has been a complete skeleton found. I believe it was called Leti. It was found a few years ago by the very first underground astronaut team, which is what we're called. We're called underground astronauts. So the very first underground astronaut team, also a team of wonderful female scientists, found a full skeleton of a Homo naledi individual, but it was not an adult. They believe it was either a teenager or a child. So, and the reason they know that is because there's some teeth that survived. So if someone's molars has erupted or not, that gives you a good idea of what age they are. And also the skull and just the general pelvis. If there's a bit of pelvis, that can tell you how old something is or if something is male or female. And yeah, that is pretty much what I know about the full skeleton that was found on there.
Grade 6 virtual school. Yep, you're good to go. If you want to turn on your mic, you are all set. Hey, guys.
Great. My class would like to know what's the most valuable or interesting thing you've ever found.
Ooh, pressure.
Wow. That is a very tough question. So down there in the caves, the most valuable thing I've ever found was probably the evidence of fire. In my whole career, the most valuable and cool thing I found was an iron spearhead from an Iron Age site that I work at, which is part of the first pre-colonial mass agricultural site in South Africa. And so that was also a really cool find for me. So yeah, that's some of the cool stuff that I found, or most important stuff that I found.
Yeah. Two last questions to wrap us up here. So you've had some extraordinary opportunities in an early archaeological career like that. To be in the midst of a master's and to have done all these amazing things already is truly, I mean, of all the scientists we feature, that's one of the best stories early in a career I've ever heard. Is there a place or a story that you most like to explore in your future career? Or is there a site that you're particularly keen on, or Rising Star all the way for the years to come?
So Rising Star kind of has a bit of my heart. It's Rising Star all the way. I really, really love Rising Star. Of all of the archaeological sites that I've seen and been to, Rising Star is the most captivating. It's the most interesting. It's the most unpredictable. And I'm a bit of a risk taker, and I like a good challenge. So yeah, I'd like to stay at Rising Star and see what else I can discover down there.
Outstanding. Well, we certainly look forward to having you back on many times to talk about it as more developments come about. So before we wrap up with all these classes here today, is there any piece of advice you'd give to students, particularly if they wanted to become an archaeologist, whether it's resources to look up, things that might have inspired you? How can we keep the learning going for students after the broadcast is done?
Okay, well, there's tons of video material. So Professor Lee Berger shares a lot of the videos from Rising Star if you're interested in specifically Rising Star material. He has a YouTube channel for that. If you just type in Lee Berger, his channel should come up. And in terms of looking for resources and that type of thing, there's tons on Google Scholar, ResearchGate. If you just type in archaeology, you can learn a bit more about what's going on in the world of archaeology and what archaeologists do. But if you're looking for advice specifically from someone on how to get your foot into the world of archaeology, I would suggest maybe speaking to a university professor. If you want to look at rising star stuff, it would be Professor Lee Berger, Professor John Hawkes, and Professor Augustine Fuentes. So Professor John Hawkes is, I think, at the University of Wisconsin, and Professor Augustine Fuentes is from Princeton University. So if you get through to them via email, I'm sure they'll be happy to help you get your foot in and maybe let you join one of the upcoming Rising Star expeditions.
I love that you mentioned this, because you can find these emails online. Like, professors and people at universities have publicly accessible contact information. If you reach out, you'd be amazed at how often you hear back, pretty rapidly actually. So if you are keen on this, do follow up. Head to museums, talk to professors, look up the amazing resources online. It's the best time to be a student ever, because you have access to so many things that even we didn't have access to when we were younger, and it's just an incredible time to be excited about the world. Ginika, this has been such a fun time. Thank you so much for joining us today. It being your first time, what we do to wrap up every broadcast, I'm going to bring in our classes to say a big thank you and farewell. So our grade 6 virtual school friends, Miss Bowles' class, and our GL Armstrong crew. If you guys want to join me in saying a big thank you, you are all in the broadcast. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Ginika, thanks so much for joining us.